Hello, 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 everyone. I used to do some dickheadery on this channel, and then I deleted my streams. I may take those highlights and put them on my gaming channel, gaming slash lifestyle, and I also have a fitness slash lifestyle channel. I also have a few music projects coming up. I've been pretty busy this year, actually, and I really had to make some arrangements and cut ties because we've had a lot of leeches dragging us down throughout this year, trying to dissuade our focus. You know, if you're indecisive and don't know what the fuck you want, you're worthless and you can get the fuck away from me. We have a lot of indecisive people who can't stick to a plan, and whether you like it or not, the spiritual world and the physical world are connecting. And when I say spiritual world, I'm not talking about the lighter, fluffy stuff. I'm talking about the dark energy that people confuse with having no soul. Atheists accept it blindly. They're not really an issue in this battle. It's the atheists who are fundamentally Christian or godly in a anti-white way that are concerning. It is the ones who threaten our culture who are brainwashed by a anti-white Judeo agenda. But otherwise, most atheists just don't give a shit. You know, they're not really fighting us in the spiritual war. We are heading into a spiritual war, but oftentimes the reality of spirituality looks more like violent darkness in real time. And whether you want to admit it or not, it is a spiritual thing. When you see fires getting set in the streets, you know, that's a spiritual moment. When you see Germans or radical white groups of any kind unifying for better or for worse, that is a spiritual moment. You know, I mean, I've been trying to figure out the different sides of different races' spiritual faiths for quite some time now. We know that Judeo people worship Yahweh and Baal and a few other deities like Jabulon, etc. I could picture, kind of, to be honest with you, a Cancerian being that way. Maybe not a Scorpion, it depends. And then we have the other side of it, which is Moloch. Now, I'm not really going to play games here or pick sides. Um, when it comes to the deities, I don't really have a problem with Kabbalah. I have a problem with the misuse of it. Same thing with Freemasonry. There were some Freemasons that had white ties, radical white leanings. You know, I'm sure a lot of the black community is actually well aware of it. They study us more than we study ourselves. It's kind of crazy, actually, how we don't know our own faiths, and then we blindly submit to Christianity, and then we blame Judeo people while worshiping Judeo people. There's no right or wrong here, just contradiction. But if we're going to get down to what is wrong, it is the white erasure happening worldwide. It is incredibly disturbing. I have no forgiveness for that or for those who enable it. And I will say, you know, I've been conflicted the last few years because I have made some really horrible people disappear magically. And I didn't want to. I wanted them to embrace their culture or to at least embrace a better path. But then I had to come to the realization, living or dead, we have to weed out the weak people in our ranks. They're distractions from our goals. Living or dead, they contributed nothing. And I have to remember that. And I have to say, you know what? I don't feel bad that I made some of these horrible people disappear. Maybe they would have adhered to my beliefs. Maybe not. But they were never truly people from conviction. So whether or not they just comply to my beliefs doesn't make a difference. It doesn't save my beliefs. At the end of the day, traitors are traitors. People who will rat you out and last convenience and not stand on their own feet to anyone are a weak foundation to build a community on. You know, it doesn't matter if you say, "Hail white power." I don't give a shit. I give a shit first and foremost about how powerful you are as an individual. So I even acknowledge your existence. And then if we have aligning ideas, phenomenal. But I've seen a lot of people misuse our rhetoric, our beliefs, our culture, you know, and then I've seen some people extreme with it that have done phenomenal. You know, I like to refer to Rome in the Second Reich, not the third, the second. I feel like the third maybe had some truths, but was also exaggerated, seriously over exaggerated. We did. The problem I have is when you radicalize one side too much, when it becomes too corporate, too secular, it's part of a monopoly. It's part of a two-party system. Whether Germany was or wasn't its own independent force and not a pawn within a larger game is up for debate. But it was getting so secular, so marginalized. It was no longer a once great, massive Roman Empire conquering the fucking world, right? It wasn't Sparta, right? This isn't Halo sci-fi era meets modern reality and crushes the enemies in the way. Maybe someone like Elon, if there were enough people who got behind him, and if his agenda wasn't intended for us enough, maybe we'd get there someday. But as of right now, that's not the case. I was talking to my father, and he told me the issue with Germany, and I would agree with him on this. He's religious in the Christian way. I'm not, for obvious reasons. But he mentioned Adolf's issue was he overstepped and fucked up by picking a fight with us when we should have actually aligned with Germany to defeat Russia. When I look at the world right now, we have Judeo controlled Russia, the Middle East Judeo controlled. And note, they were spreading their influence, not all of them, but a lot of them, in the Middle East and the West and Russia all at once. We fucked up on World War II. Germany shouldn't have been as dogmatic, as blindsided as they were, because they were taking out some really horrible people, but then they also picked fights with some that didn't deserve it. It would have been us, Germany, and Japan, and the people in the Middle East who are not lethal towards the U.S. had World War II gone right. Instead, we fucked up Germany. We kind of sided with Judeo-Russia. The League of Nations did not help, and Israeli control spread across the entire world. And now people are anti-German, anti-white, and that's acceptable. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a load of shit. And I'm not personally as pissed off right now, only because there's more people seeing this. But generally speaking, day to day, I am pissed. I am someone who speaks from the future. I'm also going to say, before anyone gives me shit, I am a neurodivergent. I do not see myself as a victim. I try to avoid being a victim status. But as a neurodivergent white person who is in great shape, who is considered attractive, who is shredded, who is athletic, considered smart once people actually get to know me, talented, creative, basically everything under the sun but rich, right? I am heavily ostracized in my own country for being a neurodivergent. While I would focus on race, I would also focus on neurodivergency. It's a real thing. Because if you're a white person, right, the rules apply that you're gifted, granted all this stuff. If you comply to the stereotypical narrative of how people think white people should act, which is a culmination of misconceptions from all races. And that has become kind of the modern American white person. Now, if you're a white person who is a heretic, however, who is a Satanist, even if you're productive, formal, upstanding, you know, powerful, virtuous, it doesn't seem to matter to modern society. They try to call you ill, etc., etc., etc. No, I am not making this video to sympathize with predators or molesters like Dagon, because Conrad, I know you're watching this. This is not a video to sympathize with people like him. This is my own personal views. So for actual neurodivergence, keyword actual, though not neurotypicals, right? They call us autistic, they call us this, that, even if it's mild, and it's actually a gift because we have hyper awareness, focus, abilities, things normies can't comprehend. So we should not be discriminated for our detached state of mind from a failing world, a failing country. You know, we should not be ostracized for that. We should be ostracized for not being strong enough. There's a sense of shame to someone who lacks virtue, and both physically and mentally, you see a failing fucking world all around you. You know, so I would advocate, yes, unionizing our race, but first and foremost, bringing back a sense of culture. And this is where some white people say it would be good if we brought back paganism because we would have a less secular view of our culture's ancestry and actually pay respects to what our culture has done over millennia ago till now. And we don't. And we're fucking dumb because of it. Half the black community in America believes in Christianity, and some of them, though not bad intention, are severely misguided by a religion that is fucking their race up and our race simultaneously. So we have that, and then we have a lot of white people using Christianity as a front for oppression. God and Satan are relative terms to the believers or non believers. So I'm not even going to go there with this video, but I am going to say, either way, we all worship a shell of what we used to worship, and we all used to have our own lands and people. And I don't think I say this with a sense of irony when I say a lot of the white community and black community would probably like to have a sense of racial security. But you know who keeps forcefully mixing them and dumbing them down? Those of Israeli control. That's the bigger picture that no one's talking about. You're not an anti Semite because you want to preserve your race, and you're certainly not a Nazi because you want to sustain and preserve your heritage, though some will come at you and accuse you of such radicalism just because you are passionate about the preservation of your kind and people and love your people. Dennis Yomus is an example. So, Dagon, if you're watching this, I'd like you to send him this video because we oftentimes have a lot who love to judge before actually understanding the content of what they're dealing with. So, anyways, I'm not trying to go too deep into this, but I'm going to talk more about the neurodivergence now. So, as a neurodivergent, you will get hated, ostracized, ridiculed, outcasted. Let me put it this way. As a neurodivergent who's exceptional in many areas, a white guy, I am seen as lesser than the racist white man sees the black person by the entire community of what seems to be America, uh, even though I am outstanding and really great at what I do. I guess being a neurodivergent has that much discrimination. Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. Neurodivergents are more heavily ridiculed and ostracized. And there's more prejudice towards neurodivergence collectively than there is towards a black man being unfairly oppressed. Now, I'm not going to say we're getting whipped and beaten, and it's a different kind of oppression, but overall, I do feel it is worse. And here's why. Look at Nietzsche or any great philosopher, and look at how much they've been interrogated, attacked, ostracized, hunted. Now, tell me why people wanted to kill those philosophers. And in modern day, don't you think they would be neurodivergents? Yes. Now, if you're someone who is neurodivergent, then regardless of race, you can relate and you can totally understand what I'm saying here. But I say to anybody who is a neurotypical, fuck you, when it comes to these issues. Now, I'm not justifying outright retardation either. There are different scales of it. And one man's disease can be another man's gift. People with ADD can be phenomenal music producers, autistic people, hyper focused, but gone too far, the overfixation on something and rigidness or inability to focus on anything, ADD or autistic, I don't really have an issue with you. What I do have an issue with is bipolar people because I view them as fucking disloyal as hell and cunty people. If I'm going to be completely honest with you, I've never seen such treachery. If you want to talk about real treachery beyond race, bipolar people are in my eyes, the biggest example of it. Now, I've been trying to understand the ancestry I have, and I've talked about it in past videos. We have the Klansmen of some sorts. They used to be more depicted as guardians, Nebelheim, you could say, conquest, sorcerers, magistrates in ancient culture. And then they kind of became what we know as the Kluxmen. And this is how I view extremes. They are only a last resort, just like any culture's extreme, to answer the call when a world is falling and crumbling. But radicalism can only be justified against a much worse threat. And the context of which you want to make a threat will warrant that level of radicalism. If we are talking about cities burning in the streets, rioting, looting, things like that, then yes, I do believe any extreme of radical white, ancestry would be appropriate, in my personal opinion, to deal with the overwhelming amount of hate towards America, towards innocence, towards purity, towards beauty. That is just my logical opinion. Erase the emotion, erase the sentiment. You know, the world is not perfect, but someone who is willing to burn city streets for miles and acres of lands and entire stores as big as Walmart. First off, the police should be handling that appropriately. Those types of people should maybe even be death sentenced if they're setting fires like that by any person of any race. Okay. And if they just so happen to be black, oh well, in that context. But this is not going to warrant hate or unfair prejudice towards all black people. Just the types who are likely to set fires and mass riot. Now, the percentage and fraction, I don't know. Some would say 2020 revealed an alarming amount, but I don't want to lump everybody of another race into a category. So this is how I view extremes. Okay. Now, individually, should we go out and harm innocent people? No. But we should assert our differences. We should be expressive. We should make it known. And we should show that our convictions and our beliefs are not going to be fucked with. And I think as a culture, we need to have a display of power. And if that power is white, oh fucking well. You can display power regardless of your race. Just don't act like a tyrant or do tyrannical things unless you've been provoked to. Once provocation happens, I think this is where we do have a problem. But up until that point, we don't even need to get to that point to be honest and truthful. This is my views on radicalism and extremes. That's my take. So when people ask about things like ICE that's going on right now, well, I have, mixed views on that. Because let's take a modern day example of oppression. Okay, I don't hate all Mexicans. I don't like all Mexicans. I'm Puerto Rican. Hispanics are cousins to me. And as a Satanist, I actually would say Mexico has some ties to Satanism that actually interest me. And for whatever reason, I do tend to get along with Hispanic people as a white guy much better than most typical white guys. But that depends, I guess, on the Hispanic person. I think with their ties to Satanism, especially somebody who is a whiter Hispanic person, because not all are like the stereotypical brown people. I have my views. I believe whiter people are calmer. Just my opinion. But I'm also talking about white foreigners. I'm also talking about white Hispanic people when I say that. I think spiritually they are connected. I think they have a sense of tribalism, family practice that I value. I think they have a sense of spontaneity, a little bit of fire, right? They like it spicy, right? So despite my own radicalism, my own views on that, I actually don't necessarily agree with everything ICE is doing to all of them. But I also understand if they're illegally here, that's a larger issue. Now, whether or not we want to say ICE is properly punishing those or not, to me, really does depend on where in the situation and the context. I don't think we have the entire story. I don't think every person they're punishing of Hispanic descent, because that's what they're focused on right now, is necessarily always in the wrong. But I sure as hell don't think a lot of them are in the right. So my views are very 50-50, because there are some people who need to get the fuck out of this country. And I don't mean because they do drugs. I don't mean because of, things like that. Personally, if you're going to kill yourself off, you're going to kill yourself, whether regardless of your background anyways. Do I give a shit if you do drugs? No, not really. But when you become a burden to society or a leech off society, then I give a shit. And some may. But this goes back to, why is the justice system not handling people more strictly? Why has it gotten so soft? Why do people like Diddy get bail? But then other people like fucking a police who shoots a guy 12 times get sentenced for 10 years. Stuff like that is pretty obviously, clearly showing you how inverted the law is. So my views on ICE are very 50-50. I do think there's some level of authoritarianism needed, and some may call it fascism, but I also understand that not necessarily every Hispanic person deserves that. And I do see the point of separating people from their families and then having, kids stay here, but then maybe fathers taken away across the border. I can see how that would create conflict. And I believe any radicalism that's done, authoritarian, should probably be done in a way that is the least conflicting. Like, why separate a kid from their family and have one family member living here while their kid's away? What is America really doing? Trying to lock us out or in with each other? Now with vengeful sentiments. I can't hate every Hispanic person for that sentiment. If your own kid was taken away from you and then had to live away from you across the border, again, this is just what I'm hearing. I don't have the full story, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. But if that's the situation, then yeah, I can understand, maybe send people away together, send the entire family, if you're going to do that process at all. If they are rightfully, convicted and should be rightfully deported, of course, with the right conviction evidence, right, to back up the claim. But I would say, obviously certain groups, certain entire families should be fucking deported, straight up. But if you're going to do so, I don't think separating a father from their kid is the way to do it, because the kid's going to grow up fucked up. So I can understand where some people are coming from when they say that. And again, I'm not going to say all people of this race should be, because I have very 50-50 views on Mexico. I really do. That's the truth, honestly, with me. I do have very 50-50 views, maybe 60-40. But that's still a lot of people. So where should we have things like ICE? Where should we deploy initiatives like that? Because I'm not going to discount them entirely. We need some fucking protection. We can't call everybody who's actually trying to help the country a fucking Nazi. Jesus Christ. Well, when we look at, groups in the Middle East migrating over here, radical anti-white groups, when we look at India, when we look at immigrants, not intelligent immigrants, we are taking the lowest version of every culture in. I hope people realize that. We're importing a lot of dumb fucking people. It's not their race. It's the fact that we always choose the lowest types of people of each background, and some dumbass thought that was a good idea to mass migrate into America. So we have a lot of really stupid, unintelligent people coming here, to be blunt and honest, of all backgrounds. And America seems to be taking the losing side of every country and world. We could have had other immigrants. Why don't they import white immigrants or certain types of Japanese? But we choose, it seems, the lowest version of every culture. So the smart people don't want to come here. And I don't really blame them. America has become a sanctuary for dumb fucks of all races. That's kind of the truth. And that's also why, outside of my own individual racial views, outside of my own neurodivergent views, we are kind of a landfill country. It's You could see the destruction of our culture, entertainment industry. It's only thanks to people like Musk who bring in AI that entertainment has a future. So at least if we're going to die as a collective, we have entertainment. At least we'll be entertained, right? But what about the reality, the day to day? Not the beautiful woman you wish was out there in public, but isn't because America is run down to shit that you fantasize about through AI, but the actual reality. It's dog shit. We took the lowest version of every culture, not just the lowest type of person of each race, but also the lowest version of every culture. And we decided to brand every race off of their weakest self, their weakest shell. We have a white culture that is worshiping a fallen god. Translation: fallen race worships a fallen god. That's the truth. You want to pussify a country, tell them all that they're saved and there's no consequences for their actions and they're just going to go to heaven no matter what they do. Don't, teach them tribe. Don't teach them to value their family, their lineage, their ancestry, to embrace it. Teach them all to put all that aside and worship a God who, you know, is okay with molestations and all those horrible things. That's the version of Christianity that has been taught to the world. Now, I understand not all Christians are like that, but many are incredibly dumb and lack the ability to discern. This country was not founded off of Christianity, it was expanded and then ruined upon Christianity and Judaism hijacking the idea of science, oftentimes controlling many atheists. Because Israel is a massive fucking issue for all races, and they wish to breed out all races. So, this is kind of my larger issue. I have my individual sentiments, but I also can acknowledge the greater threats. So, focusing on Hispanic people is kind of dumb when you look at the bigger picture and you see how many larger racial and cultural and religious threats Islam. I'm not talking about the version of Islam that spread knowledge and enlightenment. I'm talking about Islam as a whole right now. I'm talking about Christianity as a whole right now. I'm talking about Judaism as a whole right now. Have fucked this planet so hard. So, those are kind of my thoughts, updating, revising on race and tribe. Now I'm going to talk about just individual people. We have a lot of parasites, and I don't mean parasitically, like they're parasitic in one way or another. You go out in public and you do something great, phenomenal, outstanding, and you're seen as dysfunctional. Oh, he has an ego. Oh, he's trying so hard. Oh, he's on roids. No, I'm not on roids. I know what real fucking hate is and will. To understand true love, you must also understand true hate, and you must also understand will. When you're willful, you'll understand what true suffering is, and you'll go through true suffering and true tests and true tribulations. Most people don't have true tribulations, true accomplishments, true feats. They have a story of bullshit and victimhood, so they can cry and spew their fucking BS all over the internet for sympathy, and they wear it like it's some fucking crown or trophy or badge of honor. Hey guys, I just cut off my dick and became a trans. I can be accepted into this movement. And I don't really have an issue with those who are trans, but I do have an issue with those who expect the entire world to submit to their ideology. And I do have an issue when it's used or imposed on kids who don't even know how their autonomy works yet, and then tell them, oh yeah, I have hormone blockers. That's twisted and fucked up. And I don't hate the LGBT. I really don't. I don't have an issue with people of alternative sexualities at all. What I do have an issue with is those who use their sexuality as an excuse to basically harm the entire planet. We have way too much bullshit as it is. We don't need to use this or weaponize this against a race. If you want to be gay, so be it. But find a sense of empowerment in that. I don't know why so many people want to embrace, again, the weakest variant of anything. We seem to pick the weakest version of what is cool until it's not cool anymore. From a perspective of someone who may be that way, people who used to be gay were masculine, strong, hardworking. Now it's deviated into some culture of femboys and docile fuckery. So we have a lot of, again, inversion of everything. We tend to pick and, for whatever reason, align in America with the weakest version of everything rather than the strongest. If you want to be a menace, now it's kind of become this pussified victimhood. We basically, and you know how this happens. Imitators. We have a lot of sheep and cheap imitations of things being done. We have the bite-sized version of it, the lacking aspect, the cheap knockoff. We take words from other people, copy them, spew them, and think we now have dominion. A lot of people fake what they put online nowadays. They are fake fucks. We're in a world of fake fucks, to be frank. We have a throwaway culture, using imbalances, exploiting others unfairly. This is my issue with the world, frankly. We are just so fucking weak, and we've had it so good for so long. And then we let it slip away until there's nothing but shame. We are a fucking shameful country, specifically, places like California. Shame on you, California. I live in a future kind of devoid of culture. I see a much weaker version of what we used to be. I live in the future, in a sense, where mass immigration does become a fucking issue. And I'm telling you right now, for anyone, you don't want this in your own country, regardless of your race. Okay? So a lot of my sentiments in my music are specifically my culture facing extinction in this land. Okay? Just in 10 years, I have seen such a rapid decline in our culture. And I'm telling other people of all races, you do not want that in your land. It might sound good. It might sound like the path of least resistance, right? That is not always, the best way to go. We live in a life full of adversity and struggle, and yet most people are choosing the path of least resistance. They're not choosing to stand and fight for their virtue and beliefs. So I want to clarify that because we have too many people that are cherry picking things they want to hear, but doing very little to develop their own beliefs. Right? I can copy this, I can copy that, but can you actually embrace that thing that you're copying from? Most people can't. That's the truth. So those are kind of my thoughts on race, the weakness, the lack of willful people in this country. My thoughts on ICE, my thoughts on radicalism of all backgrounds, because people love to spew these narratives, this hype. People at work know that I'm tormenting some assholes online right now. People at work know this. People in real life see the iron cross that I had already carved into my arm. This isn't something I try to hide. People have this idea that I'm a different person in real life than I'm online. No, not by much. I'm pretty formal about what I say, good or bad, and I can get a point across or insinuate it without being this super horrible person that people want to paint me as. Everything I do proves otherwise. Nothing anyone says matters. And then I know there's some people like Dagon who are probably watching this right now who are going to take my words. Again, you have nothing you've actually done or really worked for to stand on. I have nothing but accomplishments in the last 6 years. Whether or not that was the best path I could have taken in the last 6 years depends. Mistakes are visible as well. But I would say, all in all, my pros really do outweigh my cons. I've seen a lot more than most people want to see, and I've even tried to help other people, but if they lack the competence to actually embrace what I'm saying, that's on them. If you're indecisive, you're worthless. If you want to chain yourself to weak people and to a lifestyle of self torment, do so, be my guest, but fuck around, find out. And many of you have fucked around. You can't intimidate me with threats. I've seen scarier people, IRL, yell at me who have actually beaten and fucked people up. Gym owners pissed. You know, I've seen massive people pissed. You know, I've seen some shit, IRL. I'm not going to say that I've seen the absolute worst of the worst. I've seen some shit. I've seen some people. I've had my fair share of confrontations, and I'm pretty rational in even the most tense situations. So these online threats, this shit, this pussified shit needs to stop from a lot of people, especially towards me. You can't take the same script you've said to a bunch of other people. You are nothing. You are this, this. That's all projection. It's a broken record. We've all heard it, and we all know it's not true. So if you want to spew your broken record at me, go ahead, but I am a black mirror. I am the dark reflection of everything you try to deny. And if you tell me lies, I will tell you the dark truth about yourself, and I will reflect your own darkness back onto you. And if you can't handle that, you are never made for the left hand path. You were never made for Satanism. You were never made for devil worship. And that's the outright truth. I give people the darkest truth. And just saying it makes me look bad, but the truth is the truth. Do I not say what I see? And if what I see is so fucking absurdly bad, do I stay silent about it? I'm sorry if this is the truth. I'm actually sorry for some of you for being so fucked up and so fucking retarded. I really am. It makes me sad. But then I also see that people don't want to change and want to continue this path of extinction, of self destruction, of weakness, of shame. And I'm like, well, if people want to continue, then fuck them. I guess if they're that much of a plague to society. I'm talking about pedophiles here. I'm talking about people invading our nation. I'm talking about people ruining our country. I'm talking about, you know, glorified ignorance right now. If people want to be that way, then yeah, fuck them. Get exterminated, you know. But again, just determining that and depicting that is relative and is all contextual. We need the context. We need to observe. We have too many people that overgeneralize. Too many people that for they hear something they don't think or they don't even want to hear, and they're like, oh no 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 no, and they just turn around and egg on the threats. This stunted emotional development in people. This is modern America. This is a lot of people. We don't have a lot of rational people. They're unable to come to any kind of collective agreement. I'm a lot more diplomatic than most people. If you try to come my way, I can tell you something extreme, but I can also tell you everything that led up to that point where that was needed. And that is what people don't ask. Why is this group so fucking pissed off? Well, when you feel like you had your tribe and your sense of motherhood and fatherhood ripped out of your own arms and potential legacy and beauty, when you get discriminated for being a neurodivergent and then targeted or labeled as this menace, it's like the world is kind of egging on neurodivergent people to step into that role then. And it's not that we want to be that way as neurodivergent people. as opposed to neurotypicals, because I am autistic, you know, not super autistic, but a little bit autistic. Big difference. But then, oh my God, he's autistic. Slander him, label. Yeah, okay. My ability to focus on things and be decisive in fixation on the things that I like is not really a weakness or disability. But society would call people like me that way. You know, society would call people like Nietzsche, Freud, great philosophers who actually made revolutionary changes to the world, disabled. And they would even try to cut off their heads and kill them because they're so collectively dumb and fucked and ignorant. And that's why we have laws to protect those differences in people. You want to talk about actual minorities? The real minority in this planet is intelligence. Truly intelligent people, truly, hardworking, successful, virtuous, willful people are now the fucking minority. We live in a world of snakes, of liars. And they know, they don't have any sense of shame. But what they don't understand is lying is actually less effective because it takes time out of your fucking day and a lot of energy to live in lies, to not live by truth. Even if you are going to lie, there is a way to do it that is a lot less deceitful. And you don't need to lie. Most of the time, you don't even need to lie. The only time someone may need to lie, and most people would agree with this, even some virtuous people would understand this, is in a last resort situation, life or death, where it could literally save your life. Then, yeah, people are going to lie. But up until that point, we have a lot of people who lie over the tiniest inconvenience. Why the fuck did you lie over that? You did not need to lie over a tiny inconvenience. Oh my God, my ego's threatened. They're XYZ. Fear is real. A lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people don't face it. And a lot of people can't face their own fears. A lot of what Satanism's actually about is confronting your own fears. Now, don't get me wrong, you can worship a literal devil, but that can even be relative. There are some demons that have been around since before the times of Satan, who we now call Satan. Did you know that? A lot of you Satanists. Much older demons and older belief systems that are actually siding with the angels for preserving our race as a white community. Did you know that? Did you know there's demons that actually protected Rome? The Templars were also satanic. I am a satanic Templar. That's what I am. Now, there were good and bad Templars. Some did extremes. Not all Templars were the same. Not all Freemasons were the same. Some even betrayed their own community. But I am a satanic Templar. A lot of what you see on the far right, some of it justified, some of it unnecessary, is actually the satanic Templars. That's what I am. I carved it into my arm as a statement, as a declaration, because I wanted the Templars' blessings and protection from a world of filth that is trying to breed me out, that lacks culture, that is going extinct. A classless world. I said, fuck that. I want the Templars' blessings. So, I did my own ritual to initiate myself because I wanted their blessings and protection. I acknowledge them as a higher power of virtue. And they are connected to Satanism in a good way, in a nationally protected way. That is what I side with. That is my allegiance, ultimately. So, that's where I kind of stand with all of the conflict. There are some people that love to provoke others. And I'm not talking about people who deserve it. I'm not talking about people who are already, knowingly fucked up, knowingly needing of conviction. I'm talking about just everyday people. I don't really piss off and fuck with everyday people. But if I'm in the gym and you're 10 feet within my proximity, don't be surprised if I blast my vocal covers and they may scare the shit out of you. Because the gym, it used to be an environment where masculinity and real men thrived. Now you see all these women in dance classes and yoga classes listening to some gay shit in a fucking weightlifting gym. No. A weight gym should not have that. There should be a sense of angst to people, of anger. And then you get all these little faggot beta twinks crowding around you, and it's like, dude, and you get all these like, and yeah, if you're a straight guy or even just a hetero leaning guy, whatever, heteronormative, you've got a lot of gay people trying to fuck you. It's creepy. If you're actually in a good mood, a chill mood, you can't enjoy that because you've got a lot of people trying to provoke you. And I'm not talking about pissed off people lifting in their own space. I'm talking about, yeah, people 6 feet within your distance. That doesn't matter what fucking mood I'm in. If I don't know you, don't even be 10 feet within my fucking vicinity. That's how I am with modern people, which is the next point. You got to be careful who you let into your life because people are fucking leeches and they will suck you dry and not in the way you want. Because I know some of you are thinking that way. We have a lot of leeches and a lot of pretenders. And I've seen some people within just a few years get a little bit of ego, a little bit of an ego boost, and then they show you their true colors and they get so pretentious, so fake. They don't want to look at the bigger picture. Everything I said I would have done years ago, I have now done. Minus music. I said I would begin making music. I never said I would release a ton of it. When I said I would punish certain people, I stuck to my word. When I said I would finish the 10-minute edit, I stuck to my word. But so too have my goals changed. Oh, now I want that 10-minute edit to someday be 20 minutes. I may come back to it. Now I'm going to focus on the other things I said I was going to focus on. Oh, I wanted to make this edit about a person who feels suicidal over society's, you know, exiling him, fucking with his racist culture extinction. I was watching a show, Altered Carbon, and when you look at the heroes versus the villains, I actually tend to like the villains from the show because the villains want humanity to be immortal, to be able to live in whatever body they want, whatever they dream of. The catch is they become too capitalistic, too exploitative of people, and tyrannical. But I support the villains over the heroes because the heroes don't even want humankind to be able to become immortal. They are supposedly naturalists. They're actually a death cult. And so ironic is it that this death cult mirrors what I view as black supremacy. Because in season 2, the heroes then change sleeves to the former culture. And I'm not going to say it's all black cultures, but there is a variant of that for whatever reason, claiming to be naturalists, running rampant in both modern day society and depicted in the show, that are a death cult that do not want immortality in advanced civilization to be a thing. And that is why third world countries are the way they are. And in Altered Carbon, we see it's actually the villains who in season 2 are later on shown. Some of the villains, not all, some of the villains are just good, hardworking white people that actually just and Asian people that actually just want their cultures preserved, and they're vengeful towards the heroes because the heroes are fighting literally for humanity to not be immortal, while the villains are actually fighting for their people, their kin, their kind to be immortal. We even see the villains aren't being tyrannical dictators, are actually listening to the people. Whether it's a woman in power who's white or a man in power who's white, they're wrathful, they're hostile. But in season 2, we actually see the villains aren't these corrupt, tyrannical, capitalist dictators. Like in season 1, we actually see villains who do have a sense of faith and care, and they're vengeful and they're pissed because their own people have been forsaken. And they're actually fighting to preserve a fucking future. And the heroes later on who are fighting to not be immortal, who don't want immortality to be a thing, who are like, stop letting people incarnate into new bodies with their memories intact, are later on revealed to actually be adapting and liking now these lifestyles of immortality. And it's the hypocrisy because each time, each season, the heroes, each episode get more and more comfortable living in reincarnation with their memories intact, each incarnation, each body they go into of their own choosing. The heroes are okay with this, but they still keep fighting and fighting and fighting the villains. And it's like, what the fuck? The heroes are now okay with what the villains said before, but they're still holding a grudge. Because in the first season we see Kovac is suicidal, and that's kind of a concept I want to explore with my editing. Kovac is suicidal. He feels like his culture's been forsaken. He's the last envoy with virtue and value, and he wants a society that's continuing but in a fucked up way to shut down. Okay, understandable. But later on, Kovac realizes he actually likes living this lavish lifestyle, this high class lifestyle. And Kovac, the last envoy, realizes I actually like being immortal and I want to find, my lost loved one. His lost loved one resemblance is a black woman of a death cult. I'm not making this shit up. This is literally the show. Watch it and observe it and analyze it, and you'll come to the same conclusions because that's literally what this is. And she's known as a Quellchrist Falconer, and she's part of the Kells. And the Kells are basically the anti immortality. They're seen as a death cult because they want to live naturally and then just die in one form. So their lifespans would be 80. But the so called villains are actually advocating that humans should be able to live 500 years. The first season shows us the corruption of living in mortality that long. But the second season actually shows us not everybody who wants to be immortal is a bad person. Not every leader is actually a tyrannical dictator. And a lot of them are properly punishing and holding traitors, villains, true criminals accountable for their actions. So I actually agree with the villains. Raylene is also of a Asian culture, and she feels like she's forsaken because her Asian brother Kovac, because in his previous lifetime, before he incarnates into this future where he feels suicidal, Kovac in his previous life, before he got brought up, resurrected into a new body, into a blonde white guy's body, was actually an Asian cousin of his Asian sister. And she felt betrayed because, again, Kovac betrayed her for the black supremacist black woman of a death cult. She, okay, so Kovac betrayed his literal Asian lineage in one life. Then in another life, he comes back as a white guy, betrays them too. And he even betrays another guy who taught him what he was in a previous life, who was known as Jaeger. I'm not making this up. These are the names of the literal characters in the fucking show, okay? So if anyone who I know is watching this. And Jaeger's actually right in the show. And there's literally another guy, I'm not making this shit up, who's named Conrad, who is a piece of shit in the show and gets killed. No, I am not making this up. I can source this. I can make video edits. So, aside looking into a mirror of my real life through a fucking TV show, Altered Carbon uses the snake symbolism because it shows us the reality of being a snake. It's very paradoxical. The man wants to find his lost loved princess woman. He finally finds her. He dies. Now she's gonna look for him, and each time they die, they don't really die. Because somehow, someway in this future, people actually permanently dying is rare. Their consciousness gets stored somewhere, and eventually someone re-sleeves them. But usually they just die and they go to a spirit world. In Altered Carbon, we have people who can die and go into a spiritual world. We have people who can go into a simulation, and then we have people who become AIs, or some people who incarnate into new bodies. Altered Carbon is very much about the snake symbolism and the Ouroboros symbolism. And so we see a lot of those themes playing out throughout the show. What happens when you get to have immortality and absolute power corrupts? And is that something that's always a bad thing? Or do some make the right decisions with their immortality and live an eternal life? These are the questions Altered Carbon asks. And as society becomes more and more superficially capitalistic, we both see a society that is in some ways getting better and better every day, and in others, worse and worse every day. And we see kind of a hyper capitalistic world, sometimes misused for communist intent, playing out in Altered Carbon. So every day, this show becomes more and more relevant and stands out more and more to me. And I'm actually going to be exploring that sci-fi concept in a few of my video edits. I'm not going to make them the fastest edits I've ever made, but they are edits that I really wanted to make and stories I wanted to tell regardless. The Asian lady, who later on becomes known as Krishna through the show, who's revealed to be symbolically Krishna, This is actually the feminine Christ, but it's not really Christ like you think. It's actually the goddess of destruction, Kali. This name Krishna has been used for companies like CERN in real life who are trying to open the dimensioning gates to basically hell, if there is a hell. And so this company CERN that is using Krishna symbolically, they actually want to open the black hole to the void into the other side. And Raylene is depicted as Krishna, the dragon lady Kali. Okay, she's basically worshipped as this feminine Christ, but she's actually a demon later on revealed in the show. And so she's kind of this god of gods, right? You have your regular gods because the humans who are rich can live like gods, can incarnate into whatever body they want. They're pretty much untouchable. And then we have gods among gods, right? This is the classism. She's literally Kali, the goddess of destruction. So I'm going to be doing a video edit later on about her because she's a really compelling character. She's kind of this empathic Pisces, right? I really like, just to say straight up, that the females in this show are killing it. Honestly, they actually picked some like really good actresses to depict some powerful female leaders who are not like your regular, bitches who are like emotional and all that. No, they're actually pretty logical and articulate. And I really like that, how this show has shown that, because after living so many lifetimes, you would be a more adept thinker. We're talking about people who live 500 years but can come back in newborn bodies and be, born again in these refined, younger, healthy bodies. Alter Carbon is the conquest, the unanswered question, right? As we hear in the Matrix with Trinity, where they're looking for immortality. Another show where you can see a very, real cultural war going on is the Matrix. We see in the Matrix the Smiths. Mr. Smith is actually a old white guy, right? Oh my God, he's so bad. He's actually not. He's fighting for structure, but he also wants to live freely in a simulated world, and he even gives people what they want. The heroes are the villains. They're fighting for Zion, the city underground, which by the way looks like hell, and not a good hell, not a hell you want to be in. This hell is full of constant race mixing, straight up, and I'm not giving my biased opinion. That's literally depicted in this movie, The Matrix. Okay. Later on, we find out in every show there's a trend that the black community has, and I am going to point this out because this is interesting. In Sandman, we see this. In The Matrix, we see this. In a few other films, we see this. We see a white guy once depicted as Morpheus turn into a black guy. I don't know what the black community's spiritual fate is, but they have something to do with Morpheus. Morpheus always becomes this omnipotent, robotic, basically the black utopian sci-fi would be Morpheus. He would be a caricature of that. Morpheus, for whatever reason, is always, finding a way to get power up in the system. You could basically, he's basically like the black community's omniscient overlord, depicted in sci-fi films. I'm not making this up. And so, for whatever reason, the Matrix films are running with that, and the Matrix is actually depicting a race war. We see this because we see that those who side with the Matrix are actually siding with more alternative and often wider Asian communities depicted in the film. I'm not making this up. And we tend to find people like prophets, oracles, Morpheus, Zionists are actually both of Judeo and black descent. So we see Neo as the main character who's propped up as the one, as a white guy, as a Christ, later on becomes actually a pawn in this larger game he's being played into. To me, Matrix symbolizes the white man's downfall on the good side, on the good guys, quote unquote good guys, because Neo is actually a white pawn being exploited to the own damnation of his own culture. And Trinity is used as, again, a plot device, his loved one, but he never actually gets to have her. But it's the chase for love that drives him to do missions for the so-called good guys who are actually running a death cult, again, because why? Because what do they want? They don't want immortality. They don't want a matrix. Mr. Smith wants that. The old white man architect wants that, right? the wise old white architect wants that, right? Um, no, no, the heroes don't want that. Again, what do they want? They want death. What does Zion look like? Savagery, fucking savagery. You want to call that your great city? Real world comparisons to what's going on with Israel right now and their attempts to defame and slander and destroy America. And again, do we want to be Neo, the pawn, who lets everybody hype us up? Yeah, do the virtuous thing according to what they think is virtue. Or do we want to be the Mr. Smiths, the guys who are on top of their shit, the guys who run the system, get the computer tech, do the coding, do the technical work. Let's get down to the technicalities of things because we're going to need to be in a world of savagery, of chaos, of onslaught towards our own race. Our own race is being genocided right now in other parts of the world. Okay? Saying this does not make you a Nazi. It makes you somebody who cares about your own fucking culture. There's a big difference, okay? So, with that being said, we have a lot of, misuse, misunderstanding. We're being misguided all the time. We let voodoo from third world countries come into America, and it's actually rigged America to its own collapse, its own damnation. Okay. And we can actually see this even playing out in our sci fi films if we watch them closely. I like aliens like Prometheus, a alien version of, you could say, white ancestry, a powerful white alien native. Prometheus was somebody who learned how to use venom, literal black goo, dark matter, to create stable ecosystems in a very peaceful and very tranquil, beautiful world on his own planet. And later on, there was a malfunction, and it created these fuck up aliens that would literally be the difference between a first and third world country. There are first world class aliens that just so happen to be white, and then there are savage third world aliens that are hell on earth that are, I'm not making this up, that yes, are the polar opposite of white. This is an Alien, a fucking movie like Alien. So call me whatever you want to call me, but I'm simply making observations based on a lot of really popular sci-fi films, whether you want to talk about Altered Carbon, the TV series, The Matrix, Alien. We are literally seeing it every single show. Even Halo, whether it's the Forerunner who are based off humankind but become AI, or humans, we see in Halo the battle for humanity, the battle for civilization against what? A foreign invader alien threat. Imagine that. So when I made a clan video for Halo, because I am making a Halo propaganda channel, I'm currently working on machinima, about to right now. I'm actually depicting a very radical, you know, white civilization in opposition to foreign invader threat, both from our own planet and from other planets across space. And this is literally an anti civilization, anti white, both foreign and alien threat. Okay. And that is what Death Legion is fighting against. That is our mission statement. And we are embracing our ancestry of the Roman Spartans in the sci fi era to do that. Because we are looking at Sparta throughout the ages, our culture throughout the ages, and their fight to sustain and survive a overwhelmingly shit world and existence. The idea that our preservation is a not just earthly war, but a war across the stars, a interdimensional war going on. I believe if we're going to talk about reality being a simulation, again, this is all theoretical and philosophical, so take it with a grain of salt. But I believe this realm we live in is actually a conjunction, an intersection of different cultures that before they incarnated into humans, okay, came in as different star seeds, different aliens. We're living in an intersection of different beings that should not have crossed paths. And that intersection now happened in this existence that has been created, and it was an abomination. And now those who want to maintain structure and order are actually fighting to survive in this hellhole we have incarnated into. And that is my views on conspiracy and the Matrix in real time. Picture two meteorites that never should have collided, two people that never should have merged in the bedroom, two things that shouldn't have happened, and then it's happened. And look at our existence is the price we pay for that. We could have existed as something much grander, greater. We could have had a much better purpose, but somewhere along the way, we crossed paths with the wrong people. Our dimension crossed paths with other dimensions that shouldn't have collided. And yes, I believe every race has its own dimension. I do believe that. I do believe each race goes to extraterrestrial lengths if spirituality and religion are real, right? Because that's all these gods of different beliefs are different alien gods, but aliens of which descendants? And this isn't me advocating, okay, universal genocide, even though I may make songs about that as a, creative idea, creative concept, right? Context is everything. You could scream about it in a song and it could sound super badass, but that doesn't mean you're going to actually go to every other planet and kill every alien that's non-white, right? But I don't know. Maybe Elon Musk disagrees with me. Maybe. But jokes aside, right? Because I'm not for fucking Israeli and Trump, who's anti-white, or Biden, who's anti-white. They're both fags as far as I'm concerned. I, you know, like some of Musk's ideas, but even him, I take with a grain of salt. But my point here is, even in sci-fi films, right? Different races fighting to preserve their ideas and customs. Sometimes they clash, but it's also an existential thing. It's a universal thing. It's not just a thing that happens here on Earth. If we're going to be hyper technical, in Star Wars, Anakin is racist to foreign invader aliens who are threatening his own people, who are shown to be bad. I'm talking about there's literally aliens, okay? They're not even black or white. They're not even human at all. They don't even look at all human. And he's being racist towards aliens who are fucking with his people. This is really funny shit that you see in Star Wars, but this is like even in the cartoons I watched as a kid, this was a very real thing that I would watch on TV. Anakin is again a universally powerful, godly depiction of a white man incarnated into the body of a force user, and he is of the Anunnaki, another white religious spiritual faith. But again, our white culture is so fucking dumb because we seem to forget how many powerful forces we have in our ancestry, from the Nephilim to the Anunnaki to the Gothic vampiric people to the Germanics to the Templars. There's so many beautiful things that have kind of, I'm not going to say they've been erased, but have been forgotten, that can come back to life really quick if we shape the fuck up and actually, live by our virtues. But most people don't want to do that. They're lazy, they're imitating, they're so fucking lazy and weak. I have no respect for somebody who doesn't know what they want, who is constantly sacrificing their own time and energy, wasting it on losers. Frankly, we don't have time to do that. We have a nation that's getting invaded, and I understand drama when you're achieving a goal, when you're actually shutting down something really fucked up someone is doing. But we're not talking about shutting down, fucked up people. Most of the people in this drama, modern day drama, are just fighting for their own damnation. Do you want to fight to your own death? Do you want, if I give you a shovel, will you dig my grave or will you dig yourself a grave? Well, if I step aside and stay the fuck away, you're going to dig your own grave and then you're going to sleep in it. And then you can't come crying to me when I said, I told you that would happen. I told you you'd dig your grave, and then you dug it. And then I'm looking at you sleeping in it like, dude, you can't blame that on me. That's all you. I literally even told you, hey, you're digging yourself a grave. Hey, fellow brother, you're digging yourself a grave. Do you want to keep doing that? Shut up, you nasty. This is like how people act. And I'm like, okay, you can dig yourself a grave. Oh, how does that look? How does that view look from down there? Hey, why are you standing in a fucking hole? You don't have to even do anything. You just watch it unfold. The best thing you can do in these situations, isolate, find your own sense of tribe and community, whatever that is, spiritual, race, ancestry, whatever, um, status on mental health, whether if you're neurodivergent, you might want to hang out with other neurodivergents. depending on how they are, right? But no, nope, nope. You're just delusional. You're just a schizo. You're just a XYZ, blah, 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 blah. That's modern people. That's why our world's going to shit. You can show people something beautiful and they'll shit on you and try so hard to make you look like they'll try to basically they'll take their shit and they'll project onto you when you're doing great. And then they wonder why you fucking hate them. And I'm like, oh, maybe because I was actually trying to do something beautiful and productive. Oh, we can't have nice things. No, if I'm going to the gym for 9 hours, someone expects me to come back from my 9 hour routine, or not routine, sorry, my 9 hour session to hear their bullshit and lack of ambition and drive and just bullshit drama. No, I don't want to train for 9 hours just to come home to someone's bullshit drama right before work. That's how to make an enemy really fucking quick. But there are people who are like that, who are inspiring. It's cool when you can come together with someone you can talk about your achievements. But a lot of people aren't coming together and talking about their achievements. They're coming together and are bitching at each other, or they're coming together on common ground of I suck at this. My life's shit. My life too. And sometimes they'll even blame each other for their own shortcomings or hatred. That's our fucking world right now. That's most people. We come together to hate each other, or we come together to be basically frenemies, or we come together to unite under a fallen empire. I'm victim status. I suck. Oh, I suck too. Let's be friends. Misery loves company. We have a lot of people who are like that. There's a lot of fucking losers in this world. And I don't mean in one sense, in one conventional way or another. I mean in almost every area of life. Most people are literally losers. I'm sorry, but that's the fucking truth. Because you try to do something good, and there's so many people that want to imitate and drag you down and get jealous. And it's like, I even showed a lot of you how you could have done this thing had you wanted to, but you're still jealous. You don't even want this thing badly enough to do that, but you're still hating and you're still jealous. Fuck you, is what I have to say to people like that. Because that's modern people. That's literally modern people. Modern people are asinine pieces of shit. So you can be the best hyper functional, and then people say, oh, the answer is God. No, it's not, because God approved, allowed this. God is even a jealous God. God is even this way psychologically. No, it's not. God's not the solution. God wasn't there when I had heart issues, when I had, actual mental health struggles many years ago. God wasn't there. God wasn't there when my life was really turning upside fucking down. It was not working. It wasn't just not working, it was actually creating the issue. That's what God was. In terms of this modern God society's hyping up, no, that God doesn't do shit for you. That God fucking ruins your life. So the only thing to do in that case is sink or swim. Sometimes you have to embrace the darkest of darkness to get things done. And that's why I like Batman as a character, because Batman symbolizes somebody who embraces their vengeance. And we see somebody who is actually going into that to become stronger. He initiates himself into the darkness. Most people don't think that way. Most people aren't like that. Most people aren't that competent, So, again, I'll listen to a Christian if his criticisms of society are accurate, but I will listen to him for his criticisms, for his own adversarial traits to a falling world. But his same adversity he shows to the world in that regard to be different and stand out should also be shown to that same God who is damning him. And that's where even a lot of people who think they're fighting the system, no, you're only fighting the leaves. You're not getting to the root of your enemy. You're fighting the enemy's pawns. You're still a slave to the ultimate enemy. You can be a Christian who deviates and sometimes even goes against the grain of a fuck society in some cases. But many of you, even Christian, you're still worshiping a God who is fucking you over. You're still being misguided on a deeper level. It's not bad enough to where I think you're a hostile threat, but it is definitely concerning in a lot of cases. Not every Christian, but there's definitely a lot who are very concerning because they think they're doing the right thing, but they're actually not. How do I say this? A lot of them are kind of mentally stunted and really incompetent. I hate to say that, but faith based thinking is not critical thinking. And in my opinion, it is actually the most liberal thing you can do, the most far left thing you can do is actually be a Christian. I'm going to be honest. Christianity is a recipe for disaster. It's a fallen empire. I think it fucking killed Rome. I understand some Christians who say, well, actually, this Christ or this version of Christ died so heretics could be accepted. What kind of heretics? And would those heretics have been like me? Probably not. You know, it depends. Context is everything. Who people think Christ was that died is gonna really affect, you know, how the nation changes. But ultimately, the version of Christianity people worship now is not just fucked, it is kind of pure fucking evil disguised as good. When protection actually becomes a noose, when comfort becomes disaster, when that creates your downfall, and then you wonder, huh, why is our culture suffering so much? That's why. That's why our culture is suffering so much. Because that religion we thought was comforting was actually literally our culture's noose for our extinction. Huh, you don't say. Yeah, so that's my beef with Christianity. They actually killed a lot of other white natives who were stronger, who were doing better. Oh no, Christianity fucking killed them. You want to talk about real goth culture? The real goths, not this poser shit you see online. They were killed by Christians in Crusades. You want to talk about real Templars, real people of Ironwood? No, they were also killed by Christians in the Crusades. That's what really happened. So in Death Legion, I want to take. This isn't a video trying to discuss my Halo stuff, but it does actually cross over. So where it is relevant, I will describe it. In Death Legion, I'm going to take that and depict that the Templars as Spartans, as kind of like guardians, right? Because I like Halo 5 guardians for that reason. That's what I'm depicting in Death Legion, right? So that's kind of where I'm going. I don't want to drag this video out too far, but I have been, painted, slandered, misrepresented in many ways. And this isn't really a direct response to any one person, but this is kind of a fuck you. I'm not apologizing. I'm not sorry that a lot of you have shame that you want to project on me. That's your own demons, your own shame. That's not my bullshit to deal with. So if you come at me, if you want to throw shade at me, I'm just going to say, I'll send you this video. This tells you in stone, as far as controversial things about politics and race, where I stand. I have to say, I think this is the most level headed response I can give while still being honest about my views. Again, we all have our own battles, our own struggles, our own lineages, our own cultures. We are fighting for our own demons. But anything people have painted me as, any evidence they've forged on me, any half truths they took out of context, I'm just going to say, this is my video. This is kind of my response to all of it. Okay, summed up. Because we have a lot of very, 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 very deceitful people in our world. And yeah, so Hail Death Legion. I actually called myself Undead Hydra. So if any of you think you're snakes, I told you I've always been a snake, but I don't lie to people. I don't need to lie to people to get my points across. I can just tell you the truth, you know? I'm a snake who knows how to show the truth. There's different snakes in the Bible. There's one snake that's depicting Jesus and one that's depicting Satan, okay? And even a snake who depicts Lilith or Aboris. You name it. There's a snake for probably every god that's been believed in mythology. If you really want to get down to the garden of snakes, it's a part of human nature. But I want to be very clear, I called myself Undead Hydra because it is the idea of something that is quote unquote dead but still living. That's me. That's Death Legion. Death Legion is a universal idea of death. You can kill the group, but you can't kill the idea that it was founded on. And that's why my group will always kind of have some level of permanence because it is the shadow that you're ultimately remembered for. It's the controversy. That's what Manson's remembered for. The less controversial he gets, the more forgotten he will become. Say what you want, but controversial figures throughout history who are now villainized were the ones who initiated real change. And this world was not meant to sustain in comfort. Change is a part of life, is a part of growth. That is what people forget. So I'm just gonna, go for 4 more minutes, but yeah, we really have forgotten that, and we've kind of submitted to this picture perfect. That's not going to work. We're heading into a really dark age really fast, and it could be great. It could be beautiful if you're prepared. But if you're not prepared, you can be a peasant in a futuristic dystopia, or a god, a titan, even in a futuristic utopia. Keyword, there's you in that utopia or dystopia. Exiled or denied, it's your choice. I like to show people two sides of what they can become. I like to show them, I don't want to say the god and the devil because that's a generalization, but I like to show them the better and worse. And where you see a god or devil, an angel or demon, among that is really up to you and what you do with it. But I try to show people what they can become versus where they'll continue going if they most likely keep going in the direction they're going in. Because most people in this world are getting shittier and shittier every day. They're actively regressing. I'm actually going back into my younger self. I'm still going to do the projects I said I was going to do that are harder in the future. I'm going to do everything harder sooner or later. But I'm also going back to my younger self and kind of revisiting some of the creative stuff I used to do before 2020 fucked everything up. And I'm going back to that. And I'm expanding on that. And then I'll expand on it even more with AI. Because we can use AI now to make the things we want to make, to see the things we want to see. That's a blessing and a curse. Are you going to use AI to rewrite a story the way it should be written? Or are you going to use AI to create a distorted misrepresentation, a disfigured view of everything that goes to shit? That depends on you. This is the harsh truth. We have no time for games. We really don't have time for games. This is one life. People forget that. They need to remind themselves that every day. A lot of people are really frivolous and wasteful with their time. And before you know it, whether you die tomorrow or in 80 years, you're going to wake up in 80 years and it's going to feel like one day just went by. And you're going to be like, oh shit. Even if you live that long, I am this old. And most likely you're gonna come to the realization, damn, I wasted all my life doing that. Holy shit, what a fucking waste of life. And most people are either gonna wake up and realize that and die, or they'll never even come to that realization but live a life of misery, you know, and they'll live in denial till the day they literally die, in fear, hoping God takes them to heaven, but deep down knowing there's nothing coming after they die. Whether you die tomorrow or in 80 years, you will wake up, most of you in this world, in 80 years tomorrow. It'll feel like it was just today will feel like it was just yesterday in 80 years from now. And you're going to be like, holy fucking shit, my time got devoured and sucked into the black hole and then obliviated. Yep. When you go through a black hole, it's like a blender. You get blended, your organs get grinded up, and you're dead, you're shredded. Or you come out the other side of that supposed shredder into this mystical great place or terrifying nightmare. It's the void, right? I'm not saying there's not stuff on the other side. There probably is. But will you come out of the other side to see that and survive? Or Is the void where even many ghosts die and get devoured and killed and engulfed? Is that really a place you want to go to? This is beyond just regular Satanism. We're talking about demons that have been around for trillions of years and beyond, before the idea of this universe was even a thing. Long before that. A void within a void within a void within a void. So fucking far back. Because we're talking about the darkness, what's always come before. Nobody wants to explore that or think about that or consider that when they think of their culture, their ancestry, their spirituality. People don't give it the thought because they don't give a fuck or a damn. And that's really sad because it's like, again, how much more wasteful can modern humans be? And that's a question with a lot of answers. But that's, again, the truth of it. So I'm going to end it with that. And yeah, those are my refined views.